This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. On this episode, it is Tracy Lambrecht and PJ Tracy, the New York Times bestselling author and the powerhouse behind the wildly popular Monkeewrench series. The latest novel is called The Deepest Cut. It is a chilling high stakes thriller that reunites our favorite Minneapolis homicide detectives, Leo Magozzi and Gino Rolseth, with the eccentric cyber-sleuths of the Monkeewrench crew, too. This time they're up against a cunning killer with a vendetta and a mother who just might be more dangerous than her son. From high-tech crime solving to psychological warfare, this book will leave you breathless and probably double-checking your locks, too. We are thrilled here to have the brilliant Tracy Lambrecht, who continues the PJ Tracy legacy, here with us today on the Speaking of Writers podcast to talk about revenge, resilience, and the ever-evolving dance between technology and justice. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. You've been writing these characters for years now. What was it like bringing the Monkeewrench crew back for this installment?
It was cathartic, it was rejuvenating, it was liberating. My mother, my writing partner, my soulmate, my best friend passed in 2016 after we wrote 8 Monkeewrench together. So we created that world together, Monkey World. We created the voices together. And when she passed, I did write 2 more. And then I began to feel a little lonely.
Mm.
And I had lived in LA for 10 years. And so I also had all these observations and experiences, and they just started clamoring to get out. And that's when I took a 5 year hiatus and wrote the Detective Margaret Nolan series. But then that started to feel lonely. And Monkeewrench was a siren call. PJ's voice was a siren call to go back home to where it all started. And it was like reuniting with the old friends. And I had so much fun writing this.
And reuniting with old friends. How have Magozzi and Gino evolved for you over the course of this series? Do they surprise you anymore?
Every single character always surprises me. I mean, I don't outline per se, not necessarily. And my characters are always driving my work. And it was the same with PJ and I. Our characters always surprise us. And every day you wake up and it's like Christmas morning. What did you do the night before? What did you do the day before? And they have a mind of their own. At about page 25, they just take over and they do stuff you could never anticipate. And that is part of the joy of writing. And I think and we always figured if we don't really know what's going to happen or what the characters are going to do or how it's going to end, nobody else will. So, I mean, the Monkeewrench is 22 years old today.
Mm.
Of course, I haven't aged 22 years, but Monkeewrench has. And what with this is the 11th book. And so the character arc is quite expansive, obviously. So they change all the time, but they retain the core of who they always were in the beginning. And, again, it's like growing up with a family. It truly is. It's like, say you have a niece and a nephew and they're in, 8th grade and suddenly they're, 30 years old and working on Wall Street. You follow their lives. And that's how I approach these characters as well. And truly our family, I mean, I sometimes get upset that I don't receive Christmas cards from them. They're that close. I expect it.
Let's talk the villain character in this book. You got a great one. Wolfgang Mauer, I love that name too, is one of your darkest villains yet. Brilliant, sadistic, and hell-bent on revenge too. What inspired his character?
Oh my gosh. Well, I people may not know, but the 10th Monkey Wrench book, Ice Cold Heart, was essentially a prequel to this. I'm not going to call The Deepest Cut a sequel. It's more of a continuation of the story because I wasn't quite finished with the villain and I wasn't quite finished with the story. And it seemed like a good place to begin where I left off after 5 year absence from Monkey Wrench. And I was a Russian major during the Cold War. And great for me. It's basically Eastern European studies, right? So, I had a lot of knowledge and a deep interest in that entire region, which includes, at the time, the former Yugoslavia. So, out of college, when the Balkan Wars began, I was fascinated, horrified and fascinated because you have all these factions that have been artificially forced together and they're splintering and there was so much brutality. It was like our Civil War times 10 because there are like 10 major ethnic groups. And because of my knowledge and the fascination, I wanted, in Ice Cold Heart, to explore that a little bit. So I had a war criminal who had snuck into the US under refugee status, and he was a sadistic killer. That's Wolfgang's father. And so I envisioned what it would be like he was a war orphan, abandoned, living in the woods alone. And he was taken by a colleague of his father's and given to him as a gift. So I was trying to imagine what it would be like from the age of 5 to be raised by an absolute sociopath. And that's the genesis, really, of Wolfgang. Now his father dies at some point, so I hope that's not a spoiler. But Wolfgang is imprisoned in a psychiatric secure hospital, and I just wondered what would happen if he escaped.
Now, Wolfgang's mother and his relationship with his mother adds a whole new layer of menace here. Can you talk about how you developed that dynamic?
Oh, I guess was probably totally anti PJ. I mean, the bipolar opposite of my beloved mother. I, she was not planned whatsoever. I had
Mhm.
no idea when I began writing that, he would have a mother figure to him helping him out. But I knew he had to have someone on the outside helping him enact this very elaborate, complex, tech-heavy plan to escape and get revenge. And I'm not sure when it occurred to me, but I thought Wolfgang trusts no one, absolutely no one,
Hmm.
but he would trust family. And he's known this woman since he was an orphan because she was a longtime associate of his father's. And she was also a female general in the militia under him, responsible for multiple war crimes as well. So it's kind of like, the reverse of like a great parental, unit and just turning it upside down.
You've always used Minnesota so vividly. You moved back 10 years ago from Los Angeles. What role does setting play in this book, The Deepest Cut, especially the rural, isolated backdrop of that mental institution?
It environment backdrop. I mean, that is one of the most critical parts of a good book, I believe. I call it the Holy Trinity,
Hmm.
and that's character, plot, and setting. And you cannot skimp on any one of them. And the atmosphere is a character in itself. And especially when you're in a place like Minnesota with wild and crazy weather. And so it's always fun to write about, but absolutely, I mean, backdrop can create menace, it can create tension. I mean, it's probably, short of characters and living through their emotions, it is one of the most evocative elements of a book.
The introduction of a small town sheriff thrust into chaos, that was a fantastic twist in this book. What
Oh, thank
inspired
you.
what inspired her character, and why bring in a fresh new voice here now?
Well, I have a little secret for you. The fourth Monkeewrench book, Snowblind, introduced Irish Ricker, this rural sheriff. And she was such a fabulous character. She's green, she's kind of hapless, she's super smart, but she doesn't have confidence. And she's from a very rural area in Minnesota. And she was so beloved by our readers. People kept asking, do a spinoff with Iris.
Hmm.
and we never did. And when I was beginning Deepest Cut, I thought, I miss Iris. Well, and part of it was I read all 10 Monkeewrench books before I even wrote a word of Deepest Cut because I knew I had to get my mindset, I had to get out of LA and back to Minnesota. And rereading Snowblind, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's great. And what a terrific juxtaposition for this, tension and cyber. She was just a really fun character to write. And I was really pleased to be able to arc her because she never had a chance before. So she was kind of a labor of love in a way.
And you'd mentioned you had been away from the series for what, 5 years, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, writing for in the LA Noir series. So, and it's so important to be fully immersed in anything. I mean, I would never write about a place that I didn't know well. I mean,
Mm,
I felt like I could not write about LA until I had lived there for a decade because, there's the zeitgeist and there's so many nuances that you don't get visiting or even, living there part-time. So it was important for me. And I had a lot of fans and readers who would just brutalize me if I got it wrong and
mm.
got sloppy. So
The
I'm
old,
very disciplined. I do my research.
yeah, the old adage, write what you know, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
The Monkeewrench team always keeps pace with cybercrime and hacking. How do you stay current with tech developments, which change by the minute,
Yes.
and keep their world to keep their world realistic?
Well, it began. My father was a computer engineer, and so I
Mm,
guess you could call him one of the original computer geeks. He started at Sperry Univac, which was government contractor, in the early 70s, and he was brilliant. And he was an engineer and an analyst his entire life. And he had so much knowledge, and that was his life. So he knew everything that happened minute by minute, basically. So he was the most tremendous resource about all things cyber. And they're not technical books per se. He would just sit there, go on, an hour diatribe about, this. And then we would just kind of, condense and make it palatable for
mm,
someone who, doesn't know computers. And so that he was key. He has passed since then, but there's one thing he told me, and I base all of my research on that now. I remember asking him, PJ and I came up with some wild idea. And I called that. I said, "Is this even possible?" And he laughed at me and he said, "If it's not now, it will be by the time the book's on the shelf in a year." And he
mm,
was absolutely so prescient about that. I mean, he was,
yeah.
incredibly right. So that's how I approach it now. And things are changing a million times faster than they were 22 years ago when Monkeewrench was written. So I still have many, many computer geek friends. So I always go to them and they're incredibly helpful. And I love research. So I do a lot of my own research as well.
You mentioned earlier your mother passed away in 2016. You have carried on the PJ Tracy name solo. What has that creative transition been like for you, both emotionally and professionally? And part two to that is, are there moments during writing when you still hear her voice or instinctively know what she'd say?
Oh, I'll answer the second first. If that makes sense. She is always with me. She
Mm,
is on my shoulder, cracking wise. She is an inspiration to me always, and we are never closer than when I'm writing, and especially Monkeewrench because we created that world together. She
yeah.
is or writing is my enduring tether to her, and and you know, along those lines, you asked what the transition was like. It was kind of a blur. It was the fog of war. She passed, and for 2 weeks, very deep in grief and disbelief and almost denial, I sat in front of my computer all day, all night, staring at a blank page and agonizing over whether I could write another Monkey Wrench without her or if I wanted to. And so it was agonizing. And on the third week, I sat down like I always did, and I started writing The Guilty Dead, and I did not stop. And it was a miraculous feat that I finished the first draft in 5 months, which had never happened before, and trust me, it never will again. So that was definitely PJ's inspiration. And it really helped me navigate my grief because she was still there.
Mm.
And she still is when I write.
Are you a meticulous plotter or a seat of your pants writer when it comes to a tangle thriller like this one, The Deepest Cut?
Believe it or not, I'm a pantser, very much a pantser. Always have been. PJ was, and in a way, I believe that's the only way that you can really come up with intricate plots. Because when you outline, it's just you outline. I also think outlining, at least for me, takes a little bit of the spontaneity and the free will away from the characters. Because so often I have an idea of what they're going to do, and they surprise me, and they say, Tracy, we would never do that, figure something else out. And that's definitely a huge part of the joy of writing for me. And if you have an outline and you stick with the outline, it's as complex as it's going to get. Case in point, if I'd outlined Wolfgang's mother would never have been part of the equation. She was just kind of one of those inspirations you have, and I think it's all built on what you've written before, and you're building a bridge slowly or a road, and suddenly, oh, let's make a detour here. And that is the spontaneity, and it enables. Now, granted, adding more and more complexities causes more and more problems, but I can't write any other way. Every book I say, I'm going to make it a little simpler. It always gets more complex. So I don't know. I'm a masochist, maybe.
Do you ever write scenes out of order or dream up endings before beginnings?
Yeah, occasionally I do. Very often I will, even when I'm on break from a book and taking a rest before I begin a new one, I will write tons of vignettes. For instance, in The Deepest Cut or Ice Cold Heart, a lot of the war crime stuff was just me scribbling and writing about the subject that I had familiarity with. So I do that. It's interesting. PJ and I would occasionally write chapters out of order, but we stopped doing that a long time ago. And I think it was because it was slowing us down. So now I'm very linear in my writing. It's beginning, middle, end, and I just, plot along.
So as we look ahead here, Tracy, is this the beginning of a new chapter for Monkeewrench? Should we expect more after this installment?
I don't know. I would not bet against it. Right now, I have a couple projects, a standalone that I'm working on, and I'm also adapting Desolation Canyon from the LA series into a screenplay. But after writing The Deepest Cut, rereading before I started book tour this week, and I just loved it. And I felt, even though it's really dark and and creepy, and I was terrified the entire year I was writing it, because you're writers are actors, right? You have to get into character. But I love rereading it, and the outpouring of happiness with this book from people who've read it already or fans makes me think I do want to go back. I still miss them, and more so now that I came back home.
Hmm. All right, we're going to wrap up here with our rapid fire fun wrap up questions for
Oh,
Tracy.
okay.
All right, your favorite villain besides Mauer you've ever written?
Favorite villain. Okay, I'm just like, I can't really rapid fire go through all the books. Are you talking Monkeewrench or LA? Or both, or either?
Any of them.
Okay,
Another
I
favorite
think
villain.
my second favorite villain is Father Paul, a Russian cult leader in Desolation Canyon, which I'm adapting. He is on par with Mauer's, just being one twisted, warped SOB, just evil. So he's one of my favorites.
One book that changed your life. What was it?
That changed my life. Oh, The Shining by Stephen King,
Mm,
because I read it when I was 10, which may explain what I do now.
yes. True crime obsession. Do you have one? What is it?
I don't have a true crime obsession. I'm really happy in my crime fantasy world. However, everything I write about, I'm sure has happened or will happen because, crime at its most basic is very prosaic. And there are only a few reasons why people murder or commit crimes. So you have to be really creative. So I'm not really, but and part of the reason is I'm always on deadline. I feel like I've been on deadline over half my life. So I never really have time to, listen. But I do read some online. Like when I'm working on character, I will go on all the websites about true crime because I mean, really, that's your source, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are your source. So I definitely do research. But no, no real obsession. I don't like serial killers. They're just gross.
Mm.
I'm disgusting.
The most monkey wrench like trait that you have.
Well, I actually I think I'm a lot like Harley Davidson. He collects wine, he's fun-loving, he's irreverent, he's blustery, and and he loves opera. And so I put a lot of he's a bon vivant, and I consider myself one as well.
If you weren't a writer, what would you be doing?
Well, I will tell you, and this goes back to my very expensive Russian major in college. I wanted to be a spy.
A spy. Nice.
Yes. Well, my grandfather worked for the government after World War II and actually worked on the hydrogen bomb
Mm.
project. And we never knew what he really did for a living until it was declassified in the 80s. And we were shocked. I mean, we had no idea. So that really made me kind of want to be, it was intriguing to me. I actually interviewed with the CIA on campus. Then I realized, okay, I'm not going to be out in the field. I'm not going to be Mata Hari, gunslinging and being, Jane Bond. I'm going to be sitting in a windowless room at Langley for 10 years analyzing intelligence. So I dropped that, became a writer. It was more fun.
And you've had a lot of fun. She's Tracy Lambrecht, continuing the incredible PJ Tracy series. Thanks for giving us another unforgettable thrill ride with this new one, The Deepest Cut, a Monkeewrench novel. If you haven't picked up your copy yet, what are you waiting for? It's out now wherever books are sold, and trust me, this one will haunt you in the best possible way. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Steve. It was a delight.
Thank you. Great having you. And this is the Speaking of Writers podcast. Like it, share it, subscribe to it, write a review. Thanks for watching. I'm Steve Richards.